Good afternoon once again from Maspeth High School. We're going to discuss modules 77 and 78 today, which have to do with prejudice, discrimination, and aggression. Not very uplifting, happy topics, but very important in understanding how conflicts come to be and how they perpetuate and go on through social psychology. So first, let's define what prejudice is. Prejudice is an unjustifiable and usually negative attitude towards a group and its members. It generally involves all of the following: stereotype beliefs, negative feelings, and a predisposition to discriminatory action. So you see there's thoughts, there's feelings, and action. The thoughts, the belief, is often in the form of a stereotype. A stereotype is a generalized belief about a group of people. A stereotype does not always have to be something negative. It could be saying all of a certain race are stupid, which would be a negative thing. It can also be all of a certain race are known to be very smart, or known to be good in school, or known to be rich, whatever it may be. All of those things are stereotypes and are equally damaging. Because if you judge any one person by a generalization of what you think, you're lumping them in with the rest of their race or religion or whatnot, you're judging them not by who they are, but by a preconceived notion. Discrimination, as opposed to stereotype, is talking about the behavior. Based on your prejudice, based on your negative attitude that you have, you're now going to put that into action. You're going to treat someone poorly because you think they're not as good, or because you think they're too good for you, and so you're going to be resentful and treat them poorly, whatever it may be. That was, if you go back to Nazi Germany, they actually had both of those examples. In some instances, they said that Jews were disgusting animals and horrible, barely even human. In other Nazi propaganda, they said that Jews were so successful, they ran the banks and they ran the world, and they were too wealthy and too rich. So they used stereotypes in both directions as justification for discrimination and mistreating the Jews and stripping them of their citizenships and eventually, of course, murdering them. Ethnocentrism is a belief that your own ethnic group is superior. So a white supremacist group would be a perfect example of that. It's saying that whatever we are better than all of the races or religions. That would be ethnocentrism. So how prejudiced are people? The good news is that in some respects, prejudice is really decreasing over time. Looking at this graph, this is support for interracial marriage. For those who are born before 1928, right, so these are people who are currently in their, close to 90 years old, there was very low support. The support, at least as of the mid-90s, was 30-40%. People, of your teacher's generation and beyond, maybe even some of your parents, born in the mid to late 70s, it's be above 90% support. So over time, over generations, in some respects, we are less prejudiced. In other respects, though, it's almost more dangerous today in that fewer people are openly calling themselves racist or white supremacists, although of course that still exists. But prejudice might be more subtle, more kind of hidden. So here's an example of that. 3% of white individuals indicated they did not want their children to attend an integrated school, meaning a school with white and black, Hispanic, Asian, all races together in one school. So that would be more of a classic example of what 60s racism was like. So we were educated enough to know that's wrong. However, the same population, 57%, said that a black son or daughter-in-law would make them unhappy. They wanted their white children to marry someone else who was white. So they're not prejudiced insofar as they're okay with school integration, but when it comes to their own family and who's marrying their kids, the majority was still prejudiced. So prejudice still exists, unfortunately, in many ways in our society. So we're going to talk about the roots of prejudice from a social, emotional, and cognitive perspective. We've now learned about all those terms in various units, and we're going to apply them to prejudice. So this is social psychology. From a social perspective, we're going to talk about the just world phenomenon. The tendency to believe that to believe that the world is just, is fair, and therefore people get what they deserve and deserve what they get. So it's the blame the victim philosophy, right? So, and this goes for people who are poor, who are on welfare. If they worked harder, they would be successful. Or it's someone who's a victim of rape or assault. If they hadn't done what they hadn't dressed that way or looked that way, they wouldn't have been attacked. We know, of course, that neither fact is true. In reality, it's very hard to work one's way out of poverty. No matter how hard someone may work, they may still be making less and be struggling, as opposed to someone who's born rich may put very little effort in and do well. We know that the victims of any kind of crime or assault, it's never the victim's fault. It's always a fault of the perpetrator. However, it's easier in a sense for us to blame the victim and blame people who are in downtrodden situations in life, rather than actually work to help them and care about them. So this is kind of just this natural social tendency for us to say, well, the world is fair, and if people have a messed up life, well, it's their own damn fault, and they should do something about it. If they worked harder, they would be better. Well, we know that's simply not true. Another fascinating example of the social roots of prejudice is the in-group out-group effect. So in-group is us, out-group is them. What the in-group and out-group is may change from situation to situation. So we all attend Maspeth High School. If we go to a game, a basketball game against Metro, we are the in-group, Maspeth High School, and the out-group is Metro. But within Maspeth High School, let's say, the next day in phys ed class, you're playing basketball against some other people. And let's say your phys ed teacher does it in such a way where every day for 2 weeks, you're playing on the same team. Over the course of those 2 weeks, whatever team you're playing on, you're going to come to identify with and call the in-group. And the other team, even though they're also Maspeth students, would be the out-group. The same thing applies to cliques, to classes. In-groups could be very small, could be a few people, or they could be large. The same, just like we viewed Metro as an out-group when it came to us playing them in sports. If we, if God forbid there's a terrorist attack against America, and, we are all Americans. We all go to school in America, all in New York City. We view ourselves as the in-group, Americans, and the out-group would be whatever country declared war on us or attacked us. So generally, we have an in-group bias, right? The tendency to favor our own group, which is similar to ethnocentrism. If the in-group that we're talking about happens to be a race, then ethnocentrism is actually a subtype of in-group bias, right? We could say we are we are white, and so we think that white people are better than this, or we are black, so we think black people are better than others. That would be ethnocentrism being a type of in-group bias, but it also works in anything else, right? That we think that we're better than Maspeth High School basketball is better than Metro. I know many of you listening may say that we beat them every year, but the in-group bias is that Metro may think they're better than us, right? Or political parties. Two people can read the same tweet from Donald Trump or from a Democrat, and if you identify as one of those parties, you'll view it as, oh, this person's doing an amazing thing, versus if it's another party, that person's doing a terrible thing. So there's also emotional roots of prejudice, where we kind of just let our feelings get the best of us. And this might happen more so during extremely stressful times, like a terrorist attack, let's say after 9/11. The way that Muslims were so unfairly targeted and mistreated after 9/11, there's never a justification or excuse for it. Part of the explanation, however, would be the scapegoat theory, the theory that prejudice offers an outlet for anger by providing someone to blame. And that someone, right, in that case, it was totally not fair. The only people to blame were the 19 hijackers, but millions of Muslims were blamed because it created an outlet, right? People couldn't blame the hijackers who were already dead, in the planes, so they blamed their Muslim neighbors or people they saw on the street. Frustration, economics frustration is another thing that might cause prejudice, right? This a lot of times with immigrant groups, it was often the poorer native population that got really frustrated and angry and scapegoated and blamed the immigrant group. Right. At first, it was Irish Americans. When they came in, they were viewed as the outside the scapegoat. Then it was Italians and Jews, and then Latino Americans, Asian Americans. As each new group came in, the native working class population view them very negatively. They're like they're stealing our jobs, and we're going to blame them for economic problems. There's also cognitive roots of prejudice. Um, so outgroup homogeneity, it's hard word to say, but homogeneous means something that's the same. So we often categorize everyone of another group as being the same, which is why there's a fascinating experiment done in Israel. As we know that Israelis and Palestinians have very different political views many times. If you don't know someone of the other religion or other culture, you may say, I hate all Israelis, I hate all Palestinians. They did a summer camp where they put together Israelis and Palestinians, and they realized, hey, this other group, this out group, they're real people. Not all Israelis are the same. Not all Palestinians are the same. They all are individual people with individual personalities. But if we don't know people from the other group, or if we know very few people from the other group, we view them all the same. All the X type of people are the same. This is strengthened by the other race effect, which is also called the cross race effect or the own race bias. This is our tendency to recall the faces of our own race more accurately than the faces of other races. So there's an eyewitness to a crime, and the eyewitness is of a different race than the person who they saw allegedly commit the crime. They're more prone to make a mistake in who that person is. And that's not even like a conscious prejudice. That's just our subconscious way that we categorize things. Things that are other are very foreign to us. We all lump in one category. Things that are very similar, the same gender, same race, same religion as us, we pay more attention to the details. We also there also may be some hindsight bias in effect here, right? When it comes to the cognitive roots, to bring back that term, right? Someone should have known better, or whether it be rape or assault. They should have known what was going to happen. When of course we now know what happened. We knew someone was attacked when they were walking down the street, but there's no way of knowing that ahead of time. So it's unfair to blame someone for not seeing the future. All right, this term, pay attention. Yeah, I put it in white, put it in a different color. This is not in your textbook. All right, so let me repeat. Not in book. So pay attention right now. Stereotype threat is a situational predicament in which people are or they feel themselves to be at risk of conforming to stereotypes about their social group. It happens most often on tests. So if women take a test, and before taking a test, the experimenter tells them that women generally do worse on this type of test, they actually will. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Since again there's a stereotype, according to this study by Aronson in '99, there's a stereotype that Asians perform better than white people on math. So white individuals who are competing with Asian American individuals on a math test may perform worse on that test because they think they're competing with someone who is Asian American, and they think, wow, that person does better on tests than we do. Okay, so to summarize, stereotype threat: people who are, whether it's a stereotype that that your race or your religion or your gender or whatever is not known to perform well at a certain task, you kind of psychs you out, you get anxious, and you conform to that stereotype by not performing well on that task. All right, aggression. A few more slides here, so stick with us. This is a shorter module. Aggression is any physical or verbal behavior intended to hurt or destroy someone else. So the intent is what matters, right? Accidentally bumping into someone is not aggression. It's the intent. And as with everything else, it's the interaction of biology and experience, or as we know it, nature versus nurture. There are genetic influences, right? So identical twins, even if they're separated, will respond differently. Part of their genetic differences have to deal with brain functioning. If there's frontal lobe damage, and actually this isn't just genetic, could also be something that occurs over the course of someone's life. If they have an injury to the brain, for example, frontal lobe damage can increase aggression. So why would that be? Give you a second to think about it. As we know, the frontal lobe is what helps us control our impulses. So if it's damaged, our aggressive impulses go unchecked and we may act on them. Biochemical influences, so high testosterone. Testosterone is known to be correlated with aggression, which is why traditionally males have been more physically and verbally aggressive than females. Not to say that you can't use that as an excuse. If a male student gets in trouble for getting in a fight, you can't say, you can't blame me, I have testosterone. We still have the power to control it. But that is one influence. Also, alcohol in the bloodstream can unleash aggressive responses, right? Because we know alcohol damages our impulse control in the frontal lobe. And this is a fascinating finding. Even the belief that you drank alcohol could decrease your impulse control and make you more aggressive. That is a classic example of placebo effect, right? The belief is reality. And so talk about some other factors. You need to know this term, the frustration aggression principle. The principle that frustration just means a blocking of an attempt to achieve any goal, whether it be sports or understanding a concept or getting that boy or girl to agree to go on a date with you, whatever it is. Frustration creates anger, which can generate aggression. So it sounds pretty straightforward. We just want you to understand that is a principle that interacts with our biological inclinations towards aggression. Other things, social, cultural, just day-to-day influences can increase aggression. Hot temperatures. Looking at this in the bottom here, depending on the temperature at the start of a baseball game, that determined how many, on average, how many hit batters would occur during that game, right? The hotter it is, the more likely people would be aggressive, and the more likely there would be 2 or 3 hit batters per game. Other things, too many people, crowding, foul odors. One more word I want you to know here is catharsis. Catharsis means getting out your aggression in a socially acceptable way. To say something is cathartic, right? You had a really tough day at school and you join a wrestling team and you really, pin someone down in wrestling. I'm sorry, I don't know wrestling lingo. But or you play hockey, like you play ice hockey, and you check someone into the boards. It's socially acceptable. You're actually playing the game the way it's supposed to be played, and you're getting your aggression out. You're getting your feelings out. What defense mechanism was that? If we remember back to chapter 2, that would be called, right, sublimation. All right, we have one more slide here. It lets me go to it. All right, sorry about that. All right, final slide of the day. So let's go back to the last unit. Reinforcement and modeling also teaches us aggression. What theorist believes this? Remember, that would be Albert, sorry for the terrible handwriting, Albert Bandura. And we can have a fascinating conversation about, not just watching someone, watching a Bobo doll experiment where you watch someone in front of you beat someone up, but how about media models for violence, like social scripts, which are a culturally modeled guide for how to act in various situations. If we watch all these scary movies or these violent movies, and every time someone gets cursed out in a movie, you see that someone punched them, is that going to cause us or cause our younger siblings to punch someone every time someone says something negative to them? And we can have a fascinating longer conversation about violent video games. Is that teaching a social script of violence, playing GTA, playing all these things? Yes, on one level, cognitively we know it's not real, but on another level, we may be very, even subconsciously tempted to act violently if that's what we're doing day in and day out with video games. Thank you for listening. Please comment if you have any questions. This needs to be known and ready to go for third period on Thursday. Take care.